Gabriel Garcia Marquez. The Colombian novelist whose 100 Years of Solitude established him as a giant of 20th century literature, died on Thursday at his home in Mexico City. He was 87. Cristobal Pera, his former editor at Random House, confirmed the death. Mr. Garcia Marquez learned he had lymphatic cancer in 1999, and a brother said in 2012 that he had developed senile dementia. Mr. Garcia Marquez, who received the Nobel Prize for Literature in 1982, wrote fiction rooted in a mythical Latin American landscape of his own creation, but his appeal was universal. His books were translated into dozens of languages. He was among a select roster of canonical writers, Dickens, Tolstoy and Hemingway among them, who were embraced both by critics and by a mass audience. Continue reading the main story. Mr. Eloy Martinez remembered entering the foyer with wet shoes and encountering pages strewn across the floor by the editor in his eagerness to read through the work. They were the first pages of a book that in 1967 would vault Mr. Garcia Marquez onto the world stage. He later authorized an English translation, by Gregory Rabassa. In Spanish or English, readers were tantalized from its opening sentences. Many years later, as he faced the firing squad, Colonel Aureliano Buendia was to remember that distant afternoon when his father took him to discover ice. At that time Macondo was a village of 20 adobe houses built on the bank of a river of clear water that ran along a bed of polished stones, which were white and enormous, like prehistoric eggs. The world was so recent that many things lacked names, and in order to indicate them it was necessary to point. Continue reading the main story. 100 Years of Solitude would sell tens of millions of copies. The Chilean poet Pablo Neruda called it the greatest revelation in the Spanish language since Don Quixote. The novelist William Kennedy hailed it as the first piece of literature since the Book of Genesis that should be required reading for the entire human race.